Wow, Shane, they sure made a lot of good video games this decade.
But they also made a lot of bad ones.
Hot take!
There's just so much awful. Look, folks, this decade we saw a number of really good, solid entries in the gaming industry, things that everyone should be proud of, should be going back to play and playing again and again and again.
We're not here to talk about that today.
No, we're here to talk about the bad ones, the ones you shouldn't play, the ones that deserve to be forgotten about, but we didn't forget about them.
We thought we'd give you a little present for the holidays. A remembrance, if you will, of the horrid things that have happened, or the horrid titles that have happened in the last decade.
But first, some rules.
Ah!
We're not going to be talking about little minor games that were being sold at very cheap amounts.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a game produced by one person and he didn't have the funding to make it go forward, or she. We're talking about things that are large-scale games made by big companies that were supposed to be good games, not bad games.
So not your dribble that's put onto like a Steam green light, or like some cell phone games that are sort of rushed just for the money.
Yeah.
We're talking about companies that have either major IP or just big expectations for a title that delivers something that is just horrible.
Yes. So to begin with, we're going to be talking about our honorable mentions.
Yeah.
So just keep this in mind. We've got 5 games that we're going to be talking about primarily. The ones you're going to hear here didn't quite make the list.
Yeah. These are little blurbs. These are our tiny little honorable mentions.
Yes. So we're going to start this off by talking about Mass Effect Andromeda.
Mass Effect Andromeda. Let's do it quick.
Yes.
Mass Effect Andromeda was janky. It was very much broken in many places. The story was terrible, and for a series that was all about a compelling sci-fi narrative, it was awful.
Yep.
And it basically shut down the studio that created the title.
Yes, BioWare Montreal ended up becoming EA Motive. Even though EA Motive already existed, they basically just took off the sign from the side of the building and put up another one.
We will not refer to you as your old name. It is cursed.
Yeah, right. That's how bad it went.
Yeah.
If you release one game and it destroys the studio, or the studio has to be completely renamed, that gives you a bad impression about, or a pretty good impression about what happened.
Yep.
But let's talk about another game that I think a lot more people were upset. This is one of the first major Kickstarter failures, I think.
Well, as a Kickstarter, wasn't a failure.
That's true.
They accrued close to $4 million. We're talking about Mighty Number 9. Now, when Keiji Inafune was first talking about this title, showing off the concept artwork, people were like, oh my gosh, this looks like a really dark, cool Mega Man game. People were hungry for Mega Man. I don't know if you guys remember, but back in the day, like, we were going to get Mega Man Legends 3 on the 3DS, and then they stole it from us. And then, so when Mr. Inafune took the stage, people were like, oh yes, great, he's going to do it now. He's going to, whatever. It's not Mega Man, but it's a spiritual successor. It didn't go good.
No,
it didn't go good at all.
Very bad.
So,
honestly, that was.
Yeah.
I remember playing that and being so upset,
right.
and I got it for free. So
okay, so the game is one thing, and some people do like the mechanics that are the sort of combos within Mighty Number 9. Fair, but just having a passable game, okay, that's bad enough.
Yep.
But there are some other things that are very problematic. Mainly, Mr. Inafune had these ambitions for this title, for the franchise, I should say. He wanted like comic books, manga, like live action films, TV shows. He was announcing other games before this title was even created. A new development team that hasn't proven that they can make great games. He was like, oh, we're also doing Red Ash, which was supposed to be a spiritual successor to Mega Man Legends.
That's true, yes. For many that may not remember this, when the game was originally Kickstarted, we saw these wonderful visuals, these really cool 2D assets, because we thought the game was going to be 2D. Right. Then it got turned into a 3D magnificent monster work. The thing is, what you got wasn't what you're supposed to get. People were upset it didn't work out. But
can I say one more thing?
Go ahead.
Make the bad guys cry like an anime fan on prom night. That is the marketing for the game.
Yeah. If you've never seen the commercial, we highly encourage you go watch it and then never pick up the game.
Yeah.
So another honorable mention that we have is one that is dear and near to my heart, Sonic Boom: Rise of Lyric. Now, let's make this clear. Sonic Boom, the TV show, actually really good. Smart writing, very good jokes. Don't even understand how that happened, but it did. The problem is the video game does not. not do that. I covered the game in the past, and
What'd you think?
it was questionable. So what happened in the game right away is you'll notice that there's frame drops, frame pacing issues, just issues, visual issues all over the place, controlling issues, story beats. Everything was just wrong. But the problem I had the most with the game was when I got to this one point, I accidentally glitched through a wall. And the wall I glitched through, I wasn't supposed to be able to go through yet, so it cut out half of the game. So the narrative for me was completely gone. And by the way, that happening is a very common thing for a lot of people when they're playing the game. Like stuff just, you can skip whole chunks of the game by accident, and you'll miss out on cutscenes. But the beautiful part is, you might think, well, can't you just go through a cutscene gallery and rewatch what you missed? You can't, because the cutscene gallery knows you didn't see the cutscene, so if you didn't see the cutscene, it remains locked. So you'll actually unlock future cutscenes, but the ones in the middle just won't make any sense.
It'll be a complete dark spot. It'll be like waking up after a blackout drunk night. You're like, what happened to Sonic and his friends?
Now, a lot of you saw the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, and you were freaking out about the way Sonic looked there. In this one, it was Knuckles we had a problem with. Knuckles looked like he was on steroids.
He was a brawler, man.
Oh, he totally was. And he was stupid, too. But that was a part of the series. He's supposed to be not that smart. The thing is, they went nuts with this game, and it simply didn't work out. It only got released on the Wii U. There was a variation, another game that was
Crystal,
released.
yada, yada, yada on the 3DS.
But we're talking about the Wii U release. I never played the one on the 3DS because I wanted to save my sanity. So let's get to the top 5 games.
Okay. We're doing top 5. This is non-sequential. I don't think we mentioned that yet. So we're not, this is number 5. These are all awful games for different reasons. So it was very difficult to, just streamline our list to this moment.
We're not saying one game is worse than the other. We're saying that they're all awful.
They're all equally awful.
Yes, all right.
All of our children are equally. Okay, first up, Duke Nukem Forever.
I was waiting for this game for years and years and years. I remember seeing so many different variations of engine work on it and so many different kinds of gameplay examples. I remember first seeing it with the Quake engine, then they moved to the Unreal Warfare engine, and it just kept going and going. And then when it finally came out, when Randy Pitchford, I'm bringing it back, I was like, yeah, Randy! Ah! And then I played it. And it wasn't very good.
I forget whether this came out before or after Borderlands 2, but I remember Gearbox being one of those companies at the time that was like, no, they do great things.
Yes.
And the fact that they got their hands on Duke Nukem Forever, oh my gosh.
Everyone was excited.
Totally awesome.
Yes. It became a black hole void. There's a point in time when I remember sitting down and doing nothing but playing Duke Nukem Forever until I beat it. And that point in time destroys everything. I can't remember anything out there at all. I can't remember what the food I ate, what TV shows were modern, music. I just remember Duke Nukem Forever. It's a burned memory. There is a DLC pack for Duke Nukem Forever, which I would argue is better than the main game because it introduces a villain from the original Duke Nukem games from Duke Nukem 1 and 2. It's actually really neat. Problem is, we're talking about the main game. The main game you buy that you get.
And this was one of those storied games, right? With a development cycle that was over a decade, like you would expect something at least reasonably good. Or if not something that's new and like, oh my gosh, it breathes life into the franchise. Something that's very similar in play style to the original game. And it wasn't even that. No. Like you could only hold 2 guns at a time, like a la Halo. And where
this is important.
Eventually, back in the day, we had shooters like Doom and Duke Nukem 3D, and it was fast.
Yes.
This game was not fast.
No. See, here's the thing. Duke Nukem 3D, the original version of the game, the original, was kind of a fun take on pop culture. There was a lot of lines it borrowed and stuff from big movies, and it's supposed to be this macho character who is a complete kind of idiot, but he gets everything to work. It's that kind of thing.
He's kind of endearing because of how like lunkish he is.
Yes, exactly. In Duke Nukem 3D, they forgot that. So in Duke Nukem 3D,
Forever.
Duke Nukem Forever. In Duke Nukem Forever, they forgot that. So what happens in that game is that Duke goes around insulting other better games like Halo and Half-Life and just laying waste to them.
Yeah.
The problem was, when it did that, it also borrowed the gameplay mechanics from those games, like the two controller thing. Yeah. So it's like, wait, you can't make fun of Halo and then introduce the mechanic that is limited in Halo. It had to be the exact same game. Like, look, in Duke Nukem 3D, you can have a shrink ray or a freeze blast gun or any of those cool things, pipe bombs, whatever. You use all that throughout the level. level, and you can choose to use it whenever you want. That's what made the game so fun. In this game, you can only use one at a time, and it really, really sucked. I can't believe they did that.
Well, talking about how he was like making fun of other games and stuff, like just his lines in general, just like that lunk-headed charm from the original, that didn't age well.
Nope.
And it was exactly the same as it had used to be, and it felt so like forced.
It would have been great if Duke felt like he was out of place in the modern era and making fun of the mechanics and then breaking through those mechanics. Mm-hmm. It would have been kind of a cool commentary on modern video games and how older ones had like a bit more style and stuff, but that's not what this was. The essential format of the game is making fun of games and then utilizing their mechanics, and then that's it. It's like
you don't do that.
You don't, and
that's called being a hypocrite.
Yeah, you took the worst parts of those games and implemented them in your own game, and it's like then there was nothing left. Awful, awful experience from beginning to end. It's got a terrible story. The only thing that's really good is John St. John's performance. He's just as Duke Nukem as he ever was, and there is some dialogue that he says that's pretty fun. The thing is, the game just doesn't land, and it was a huge mistake. Also, gigantic loading sequences when the thing originally launched, too. I hated
loading was bad. Speaking of loading... Good transition.
Yep.
And a lot of problems. Yep. SimCity 2013. Hey, do you guys remember this one? This was the online-only SimCity game that when it launched, the internet was screaming.
Yes.
Screaming forever.
I picked this game up on launch day. I'm a huge SimCity fan. SimCity was one of those games that I grew up playing a lot. I just loved the ability to manage a city, build whatever you want, and then have Godzilla destroy everything. When they created SimCity, this new one, which was just called SimCity, it was a reboot of the franchise. Let's bring it in, make a whole new idea. And their concept was, look, to manage a city realistically takes a lot of processing power. Your computer likely can't do that. So we're going to give you the game, all the code and all that stuff, but all the major processing is going to take place in a power server somewhere, Stadia. And what's going to happen is that when that game is broadcasted to you, it's going to work flawlessly, Stadia. And then it's going to be great. The game's going to work. It didn't work. This SimCity just didn't work. I'm talking the most basic fundamentals of building blocks. The basic community people.
Yes, they would go into random houses at the end of the day. The AI, whatever you want to call it, for the vehicles were having problems just like going with the flow of traffic, even if you had roads well paved.
A perfect circle, it wouldn't be able to figure out how to get around. It was shocking. Every implementation of the game kept getting worse and worse. And what made it even more terrible is that you mentioned this too. You'd have to take one map and then build another map because you didn't have enough space on that first map to build what you needed to do.
And they purposely did this because this was when EA was dabbling with like games as a service, and they're like, okay, let's make it so that people are always online and communicating with each other. It was kind of the beginning of that, right?
Yes.
But yeah, it felt so terrible going from a series where you can make your own gigantic city with everything in it to being like, okay, I can only specialize in this one thing, and if my buddy specializes in this other thing, then our cities will kind of work together. You don't want that.
No.
This is SimCity. This isn't Sim part of a city. That quote should be somewhere.
Yeah, that really should be it. And folks, when it came to that game, they tried to improve it. Eventually, this whole thing was, we can't possibly do this processing on your system. Then they released an update where it did. And then the game still wasn't working all that great. No matter how you go about this, SimCity is a failure of a game and one of the worst things ever. Not only because of that, but because it actually led to the potential destruction of the creators themselves, the actual like developers that were at EA. They ended up, a lot of them left, and a lot of them went their own ways. And it was like, no, Maxis was a very important part of the gaming industry, and to see them kind of go away like this hurt.
It's the EA curse. Well, now there's City Skylines, and people can play that.
Yes,
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, next up. Next up is it's a series that I think you know. You know this series, right?
Yeah, Metal Gear Survive.
Metal Gear Survive.
I'm a huge Metal Gear fan from all the way back. I'm talking NES, MSX. Like, I've been playing these games forever. And Survive is what happens when Kojima leaves.
Yeah.
And then they were like, hey,
this is exactly what would happen if Kojima left the company.
We still own Metal Gear. We can still make more games. We don't need Kojima. And you did. You really did.
No, they didn't. They had his Fox engine.
That's true.
They had all of the assets from Metal Gear Solid 5, which they assumed that they could just reuse.
Yeah.
Mostly for a survival zombie game to jump on board with freaking DayZ,
Yeah.
and was like World War Z or whatever,
and to not mess up the story. All the things you're hearing about, I don't care how the ending of the game goes. Everything we're talking about takes place in an alternate dimension from Metal Gear Solid 5's world, where like there is this weird portal that opens up and it drops everything down. But it's weird because the timelines don't line up. All you need to know is this: it's stupid.
You know, when I was researching this, I actually found out that Hideo Kojima pitched Metal Gear Revengeance, the second one, as a kind of a zombie game. Sure. That blew my mind. Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh.
And if he did it,
Hideo wanted, if he did it, it would have been fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then he ended up making Death Stranding, and now I don't know what to believe in anymore. Next game. Aliens Colonial Marines. This is very important, folks. If you know anything about Aliens Colonial Marines, you'll know that the game came out 1 year before Alien Isolation, which is going to be important later on. Adam, what was wrong with Aliens Colonial Marines?
Aliens Colonial Marines kind of had a little bit of the Duke Nukem Forever syndrome, in which it was like the IP was sort of picked up and the game was being worked on for many, many years.
Yep.
And it was being tossed back and forth, and then finally it was showcased at a trade show. It looked pretty good.
Yeah. I thought it looked nice.
Yeah, and then when the game was finally released, the discrepancy between that footage and what we got was enormous. Like, I would say it was even bigger than the whole Watch Dogs debacle that happened. Like, It was really bad. But not only visually was it bad. Like,
some reason, for some problem, the AI in the game seemed really stupid, really badly stupid.
You'd see xenomorphs just kind of running around in circles and stuff.
Yeah.
It was not frightening. It should be frightening.
The best way to explain it is that every character in Aliens Colonial Marines is drunk. That really seems to be the way the game was designed, which was a curious choice from a company to do something like that. Then, years later, let's make this really clear. Years later, at ModDB, a user named James Dickinson 963 discovered that there was a typo in the code of the game, and he just fixed it, and the AI started working normally. Like, the game got way better. Now, there's an idea of rags to riches of a game that was released, whatever. This didn't get the game 100% better. It still sucked, but at least the AI was working, which probably would have made it work a lot better back when it had come out. You can't fix the console versions, by the way. You can't just go into the console version and fix it. So it only works on the PC release.
I don't think they played it.
Yeah.
I think they developed it, and they were like, no, it's good. And then they're like, send it out. And then they just didn't, because they would have played it and been like, oh, we forgot to add that one. It was like a tiny, like 1 or 2 letters or digits that had to be put into the code to fix it. You would have
to cause the problem. Yeah, it was crazy. Now, why this game is so important is because when you look at the visuals of this game and compare it directly against the next year's installment of Alien Isolation, it is shocking. Alien Isolation looks like a generational leap over the previous game, and it's not that. Like, that's not what happened here. It's literally just one company spent way too long working on the game, and I guess either didn't put enough effort or time into it, or whatever happened. Issues happened with development, and the other company, a lot of people didn't trust Alien after that Colonial Marines thing, and then Isolation just totally blew everybody's expectations away completely.
What also blew my mind was that Aliens Infestation on the DS came out in the same sort of span that Aliens Colonial Marines was being worked on.
A little bit earlier, too,
and, it was earlier than the DS game, and it's made by WayForward. It's ridiculously good. It's like top 20 DS games, I would put it. Great action game. WayForward could make a better 2D kind of roguelike Alien game in like little time compared to this big cluster.
It's crazy, right? This kind of stuff shouldn't happen, but it did. There were people that were involved in this production from day one, like Sid Mead, who created the original art designs for Alien, Blade Runner, Tron, so much. And a lot of that work just goes away because you don't want to play the game. And that's one of those things that really suck. Now, let's talk about some good redemption stories, because this is the thing, folks. There are games that we played that weren't good when they launched, but things changed and made them better, which is why you're not going to hear them on this list. So let's talk about the first one, No Man's Sky.
Yeah, No Man's Sky. A lot of people might be wondering, hey, why haven't you spoken about that? It's because there's been a huge turnaround in No
Yes.
Man's Sky. And I actually didn't realize this until we were talking about No Man's Sky. I think we did a hot take. And a lot of people were saying, guys, like, no, there have been drastic changes. And upon reflection, like, it's been huge. And they've continued to keep that snowball kind of going and making the game better and better. Hello Games has proven that they're ready to hunker down and make sure they ship a good product.
Yeah,
or they shipped a good product.
Yeah, so here's how this works out. When No Man's Sky originally came out, it was a garbage game. I don't care what anyone else out there says.
It was boring.
Yeah.
At best, it was boring.
There's so many people that like to make the argument that the game was fine, you just didn't understand it and stuff like that. And it's a very consistent argument that goes across the board. The problem is those arguments only make sense now, but back in the original day when it came out, the game would constantly crash your PlayStation. It would constantly crash on PC. It just crashed all the time. It just wasn't a solid game. It did not work. And there were so many elements wrong with the game where it was just a super boring slog. Then they introduced all these things to fix the game, and that was it. The game was amazing. I'm talking huge story missions. We're talking about construction of items like vehicles.
It's not just fixing the core game. It's releasing what is like huge packs of DLC for No Man's Sky that allow you to have so many different sort of gameplay abilities within the No Man's Sky's universe, making the universe feel bigger and like just more alive. That was a big problem I had with it, was that it felt like really dead and empty to me.
Yeah, and you know what, folks, that's really what this is. The game wasn't good before, and then they fixed it, but when no one thought they were going to do it. Now, the problem is, there are other games that follow that same suit, and I don't think anyone was expecting this, because it's a very recent development, Star Wars Battlefront 2. Not the original Star Wars Battlefront 2, we're talking about the 2017 release.
Yeah, the original one was already okay.
Yes, yeah. Star Wars Battlefront 2 2017 launched with so much paid DLC, so much garbage, so many problems that it was shocking. The game ran okay to an extent, but there were so many balancing problems that it really felt like it was rushed.
The landscape of DLC legality seems to have all stemmed from the problems that happened with the initial launch.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, that's the reason why people are still, like, there are court cases about whether or not it's like legalized gambling.
Yeah.
This was kind of the catalyst to start it.
Yeah, this is when EA, I think, hit one of their lowest points they have ever hit. They took a magnificent franchise, a magnificent series, and they almost destroyed it, to the point when I believe that one of the CEO of Disney had to call EA and be like, what are you doing? That kind of bad. So when stuff like that happens, it almost destroys a franchise that exists outside of gaming, you really have to take pause. What has happened is they've scrubbed out all of that bad stuff, rebalanced things, retooled things, given you so much content. And I'm talking about the stuff you had to pay for originally is now no longer pay. There are still cosmetic items, I believe, in there, but they don't actually change the balance of the game. But the actual elements of the game that are important, like being able to play with heroes, that's the big characters from the Star Wars universe. They have like superpowered abilities and stuff. None of that is locked behind doors or anything like that. They finally did it.
Being able to get those heroes without having to put in, like, I don't know, it was ridiculous at the very beginning. Like, they were basically forcing you to pay for these things because it would take hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of hours, right?
Yeah. The original Star Wars Battlefront, not talking the original one, I'm talking about the
This
sequel.
is so hard.
Yeah, the third entry, basically. That one, people were really upset about that game because it felt like it was limited. There wasn't a lot of things to do, and it felt like they just made a really small game. And Part 2 was the answer to all that. Part 2 has loads of content now. If you are a Star Wars fan and you like Battlefront, you should give a shot to the new one, because the new one really does fix a lot of that stuff.
Oh, hey, Shane.
Yeah?
We have one more game we want to talk about before we wrap up our worst games of the decade list. Hey, you folks listening or watching right now.
Buckle in.
What do you think it is? Let's do like a Dora the Explorer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's Fallout 76.
It's Fallout 76.
This one really hurts, folks. Fallout 76, I've been following almost daily. I always hear new news about it. It gets worse and worse. The most recent development in it that's going wrong right now is that people are hacking the game and dropping objects from the single-player Fallout 4 experience in the game world, and it's destroying elements and breaking the game completely. But before that happened, there were so many other problems.
In-game, in the real physical world, it's enormous.
Yeah.
There was the not linen, the canvas bag problem that happened, right?
Yeah.
And even there was a helmet, a Fallout 76 helmet that came out that had some sort of mold in it.
Yeah.
And that's not even talking about the game.
Yeah,
What was wrong with the game, Shane?
Okay, so When the game launched, we were told that we were going to have the ability to play a single-player experience free from playing with other people, because for Fallout, a lot of people considered a single-player experience, which is fine. The problem was, when they made this game, they lied. That's really the only way we can go about it.
It would play better with many characters playing together.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
That is true.
So here's what ends up happening.
Oh, boy.
When you go to play the game, there are no NPC characters in the world. This was a very big issue. NPC characters are the characters you interact with in the Fallout universe. In the first run of the game, it has changed since. They've added a lot more, but none of it has really fixed the game.
I guess the sort of glitch or the hack that happened recently,
Yes.
they were able to bring in NPCs
Yes.
that weren't actually there. And yeah, it's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's broken.
It really doesn't work. When you can build something, it disappears the next day. There were so many issues and bugs at the very beginning of the time of the game.
We got to talk about Fallout 76's their special pay.
Oh
monthly.
yeah. There was a
I can't remember.
monthly pay.
I can't remember the monthly payment plan.
It's so hard because there's so many bad things with this game.
Do you remember with the monthly payment plan, you'd get your box, and you could store unlimited
Yes.
or many more items, and you accrue all these things there.
Yeah.
And they could just disappear.
Yeah. Yep.
And this is like several months after the game's released. And they want your money. They're like, this is the premium experience. Oops, all of your stuff is gone.
What ended up happening was so few people liked Fallout 76 that they ended up not selling a lot of copies. It is in the bargain bin now, and they had to find a way to monetize the existing user base, so that's how you do that. It is a dirty tactic, and it means the game has failed, and that's what this is. Now, I want you to keep this in mind. When we talk about No Man's Sky and Battlefront 2 being fixed and stuff, those games are fine as they are. The games necessarily weren't completely broken at the beginning. The thing is with Fallout 76, its core mechanics are broken. It's a different kind of broken. In the original Fallout games that are made by Bethesda, there is this ability where you can basically stop time, point at a character, and shoot at certain body parts.
VAT system.
Yeah. That's in this game, but it runs in real time. It's totally broken. Like, you can't fix that, because in order to fix that, you have to slow down time for everyone else on the server that's playing. How do you do that? Suddenly, if there's 100 people on a server, it's slowing down every couple seconds for everyone that's playing. It's a nightmare scenario. They cannot fix it. There's no way to get out of that hole. And I don't think they keep adding things to it, but every time they add things, it breaks things or bricks mechanics. Mm-hmm. It just keeps getting worse. Where No Man's Sky consistently got better, where Battlefront 2 got to the bottom pit and then they fixed it, what you're seeing with Fallout 76 is a true decline. It's never going to go back up.
And you know what, man? Fine. Here's the nail in the coffin. We've already spoken about this before. Outer Worlds comes out of nowhere.
Yep.
And everyone's like, okay, so that's Fallout now, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, we're just going over there. You can keep doing your weird premium pay monthly online thing over there. No one will play it, until you prove that it's a game worth playing.
You know what? The funny thing is, when you look at what happened with Fallout 76, it shows a total... just a complete mistake, a bad move by Bethesda. But what's really crazy here is when you look at Outer Worlds, and you know that Outer Worlds was done by a skeleton crew of people, and Microsoft purchased them before the game came out. So now, if there is an Outer Worlds 2, and you better bet there's going to be one, Microsoft is going to invest all of that money in there, allow them to build a much bigger team that could likely rival Bethesda and make a much bigger, better experience. This is what's going to happen, folks. It's going to happen. When it does, how many people are going to remain? Fallout 76 was so bad, it actually destroyed the franchise of Fallout 76.
I know. And
Fallout in general.
We're speaking about the decade. Maybe this can kind of wrap things up, but talk about a company starting out the decade, having every gamer at its back.
Yeah.
Mostly there's some stumbles here or there with some armor and whatnot.
Yes,
but people used to find the jankiness of the older titles, Elder Scrolls and Fallout. The jankiness was endearing. It's just,
it's Bethesda jank. Yeah,
they'll get better. How things have changed.
Yeah.
My gosh.
Yeah, it's nuts. Look, Bethesda's going to spring back. Don't worry about it. Don't think that they're out for the count. They're a massive company with lots of talented people there.
When Obsidian makes their Elder Scrolls fantasy game, they're screwed!
No. I'm not talking about Fallout. I don't think we're going to be going back to Fallout anytime soon. Okay. I'm talking about other Bethesda games. There is a new Elder Scrolls game. There is that space game they're making. They're going to do other things. I think Fallout 76 is a perfect storm of bad things. I don't necessarily blame them directly. It's just, it was a crazy situation that happened. But with all that being said, folks, what games did we not mention that
Oh
you
my
thought
gosh.
were really bad that should be on this list?
Decade is such a long time.
Yeah.
Making a list like this is insane. It's very difficult to do. So yeah, let us know the things that you think that we missed, and we'll peruse.